All
Camera.
right, we
Try to
are
figure out.
live.
Okay.
Welcome to
Yeah, yeah.
another episode of the Green Team Academy podcast. And I'm very excited today because we're going to be talking about a project that Albert Kueffner started, and it's going to be super cool. And before we dive into that, I just want to let you know of a few of the upcoming podcasts that we have for the next couple of weeks. So next week on October 13th, we have Tara Toll. She's going to be talking about the Denver Climate Action Initiative. And then Shayna Oliver is a Dene woman. She's going to be talking about her work with Moms Clean Air Force and how you can help improve air quality in your communities through her advocacy type of example and information. And then on the 27th, we have Lisa Yee Litzenberg, who is going to be talking about how to find a green career even in these challenging times. So that's a fun lineup. So just want to make sure that you knew about those before we dive in. But right now, let me see here if, okay, so it looks like we've got Bigger Al-Islam tuning in from Korea/Uganda. So that's cool. So welcome. And yeah, so Albert had this idea, which I can really relate to. So the topic today is Black and White Conversations from the Heart. And I grew up in downtown Denver. When the high school I went to, it was a time where they were busing white kids into this Black school, predominantly Black school. And so I had a ton of Black friends. And then I went to college, and after going into engineering, and I finally wrote a note on my fridge that says, "Make Black friends," because I just was not interacting with anybody but whites, just because of the career path that I had chosen and all the white supremacy and everything that goes with that. So anyhow, I went to Ghana, and I changed that around, but I could really relate to Albert's idea. And so Albert is with the Unitarian. Let me get this all up here. He's an avid eco-justice advocacy member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. And at age 75, he told me this, is one of the elders in July that participated in this Healing Our Ecological Movement Jam for diverse climate justice leaders put on by Yes. So that was elders with young people working together. He's been doing a lot of stuff with No Coal in Oakland, Faith Against Fracking. But a kind of interesting thing that I didn't know, and I've been working with Albert a long time, is that you started out wanting to make $1 million and started out as a Republican.
Right.
So first, Albert, thank you so much for joining, and good morning. I know it's a little early in California.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Right. I see we have a green plant behind you, and it was very, very overcast today, so I didn't get to say hello to the flora outside my apartment. So thank you for the green plant.
Yes, I talk to this plant all the time.
Oh, great.
I was asking this morning, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you.
I'll relay your wishes. Awesome. So before we talk about this idea, so Albert is one of the challengers in the 2020 International Climate Action Challenge, and his challenge is to launch an initiative called Black and White Conversations from the Heart, and to make some progress in 90 days. But could we take like 2 minutes? Can you tell us, what was the deal? You started out as a Republican. What changed things for you? How did that happen?
Well, I went to the district meeting for St. Paul, Minnesota, where I grew up and worked downtown. as a stockbroker, and my dad represented that assembly district, and so of course they elected me right away. I had no experience in politics, but I thought I was representing the people of the precinct. But when we went to these higher level meetings, I found that they had absolutely no interest in anything we had to say. They would not even let us talk about those sorts of things. They only talked about what the bigwigs wanted, and I realized that this is the party of business people, and all they care about is making money, and all they care about in that regard is the people who have the most of it, apparently, and that's who they serve. And so I was very disillusioned, and I quit very shortly after that experience, and went out to California and just sat in Berkeley Library for 5 months and studied transactional analysis, psychology. And I still, most of what I do, even today, is got to do with that, but in a much more analytical or mathematical format. So,
right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that was an interesting thing, because we've been doing our weekly group coaching, and I didn't know that until I saw your bio. So that was interesting. Yeah. All right, so let's get into this idea. So what got you to this point of thinking, well, let me back up. So during this whole kind of racial reckoning, the awakening for a lot of white people realizing, oh my gosh, this is what Colin Kaepernick was talking about, that a lot of people are recommending that white people go read books, and that's where what they should do.
Right.
And you have a different idea, which is getting people to talk to each other and understand each other. So tell us a little bit about how your idea came about.
Well, at Unitarian Universalists of Berkeley, there are quite a few Blacks, and we have a lot of social justice and anti-racial stuff, and I'm talking a lot with Blacks. And so I found that after doing this, I could finally treat Blacks as peers, but I realized it was only because of these face-to-face interactions. And so I thought, well, we still have all kinds of racism in this country. This country was built on racism, or indentured servants, or using Indians as labor, or just killing them off because you wanted their property, and so forth. So I figured the only way that you were going to get something. Well, actually, I wrote an email to my social justice committee and a lot of other people. I sent it out to a couple hundred people, and the email. Here it is.
Maybe
if you want to go into more depth, I mean,
yeah. I think we just have this half hour, so
right.
I think
okay.
But the idea. So what you're saying is that you experienced personally that when you started just having one-to-one conversations with people,
right,
that a lot of the systemic racism that was kind of driving perceptions and things like that fell away,
right.
when you just knew each other one-to-one,
right,
and understood each other.
Exactly.
And so you sent this email out to folks. You use Chris Singleton as an example for what you want to do. Could you tell us a little bit about who Chris Singleton is and what kind of how that fits into what you were thinking?
Right. Well, in that email, I mentioned him. I sent the email out on Juneteenth weekend. And so I said, in accord with today's Juneteenth celebration, here are some maxims for Black-white relations, stated as a preface to some topics of conversation for enhancing them, followed by an exemplar, who was Chris Singleton, of all 4 maxims that I talk about. And the first maxim was hearken to the words of George Floyd, I can't breathe, and mama. Second one was nurture white grass roots with fertile black soil. In other words, we both have something to offer, and C was in that regard, teach whites what blacks already know. Come from a proactive first-person perspective, promote your point of view and want others to promote theirs in public conversation wherever people gather, inside or out. And C, never lose the beat of connectivity when you rap with others. And the last maxim was people of different ethnicities stop discriminating against one another when they do things in common, beginning with talking amongst themselves. Possible topics for conversation could be desire for validation, a better life,
right,
love of a good Samaritan, so forth.
I want to cut you off because I want to get into some of those details.
Okay.
But yeah, so those maxims. So in general, you're saying white people need to learn from Black people. So it's not only just having conversations, but whites need to learn.
Right.
Some of this communication. So let's jump into the Chris Singleton
Right.
example. Tell people who he is and how does he kind of model these maxims?
Right. Chris Singleton exemplifies these four maxims. With regard to the first one, Chris Singleton's mother was deprived of life and breath, just like George Floyd, along with 8 other African Americans, in prayer 5 years ago in the Charleston Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church shootings by a white supremacist. B, the second maxim, Chris brings the impact of his personal experiences to all races all over America. This is the fertile Black soil nurturing white grass roots. We Democrats are the grass roots, okay? The third maxim, during his public speaking, I noticed my head always nodding yes to a beat, because his head is also bobbing to a beat, and you pick up on that. And so you're agreeing with him because he's nodding his head, and the beat, the regularity, the continuity of it has something to do with it, I think. And then D, his topic of discussion, the fourth maxim, was the scarcity and sufficiency of love. And he had his audience members of different races validate one another with a hug. So he exemplifies all 4 of those maxims. And I want him to be a keynote or a kickoff speaker to some sort of conclave of whites and Blacks, where they do they do an exercise in breakout rooms or whatever, where they talk about these different topics. Right. Of discussion. So
I love that Chris Singleton says when he starts his talks is, go find somebody who's here that doesn't look like you, go give them a hug and tell them I love you.
Right.
And it's right. Okay, we're in church. And so there's a lot of things going on there. Right. And the other thing I want to mention is that this process that we're talking about right now, that in the Climate Action Challenge book, all these steps that are in there, these are things that Albert has been doing. And so
absolutely.
Identifying exemplary models is one of the key steps in there, because, you're never starting from scratch. Somebody else has already, figured out what works. So start from that. And so Albert, one of the other things I thought was interesting was that you started, because you're active in your church, that you started thinking about these intercongregational discussions. And this is a good point for anybody out there. If you're a teacher, then, try something in your school. If you're part of a faith community, then do something in your faith community. If you're working somewhere, they have a corporate sustainability or some kind of equity thing, then do it there. So do it where you already have traction to kind of make that the proving ground. So
right, and I enjoyed 2 days after I wrote this email, one of the addressees was my Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Committee. And 2 days after they got that email, they formed the Anti-Racism Task Force. And what I didn't know was that somebody, actually the co-chairman of the committee, was already meeting with a Black pastor and his wife with a view towards having intercongregational discussions. And they've since done that. And so that was already in the mill. I didn't even know it, you know?
Right.
But this is what you get by expressing yourself on an issue to people who might be able to do something about it.
Yeah. And so I think some of the things that have been coming out, you know, it just reminds me, this whole thing, you know, government will make a plan, they'll start working on something, they don't really consult the community, and the community has other ideas and it doesn't go very far.
Right.
And so, you know, I think that what you're advocating is that respect. Let's get to know each other. And so as you have started having some of these conversations, some really interesting initiatives have come out of it,
Right.
including this kind of home sharing idea, which again, I don't think would have ever come out if white people were just sitting there reading books alone. They may not have, you know, figured out that, oh, there's a need on one side and a need on other, and we could together kind of collaborate. So tell me a little bit about the this home sharing idea.
Right. Well, I thought I was going to be leading intercongregational meetings with the help of Yes. It's a nonprofit that connects, inspires, and helps youth mostly to connect, inspire each other, and collaborate on projects. The project I was in was about 25 youths and 5 elders concerned with Black Lives Matter and how we can collaborate on that. And these were people from all over the country, including two from organizers, young women of color from 350.org. And so, but the woman who leads, Shilpa Jain, the woman who leads Yes, wanted me to ask me if the Unitarians, their elder members had spare rooms. And I said, yeah, I suppose, you know, we have a lot of elder members and living in big houses, and a couple of them just moved into assisted or independent or assisted living facilities because their house was too big to take care of. And once they moved into these assisted living facilities, they didn't mind spending, you know, anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000 a month because they had somebody to talk to, you know. And so, hey, what, you know, relationships are more important than money, as it turns out. So tell
us a little bit about the area that you're talking about for people that don't know where you're living. Like, what are the kind of demographics of income and ethnicity or race? Where are you joining us from, and where are you talking about doing this?
Well, I live in North Oakland in a former red line district, which is mostly Black. Virtually all my neighbors are Black, and I love it here. There's a lot of young Black kids. I just love seeing them run around. And this is a party area.
And so is that what the Unitarian?
The Unitarians, Unitarian Universalist of Berkeley is actually in Kensington. It used to be on university property, but the university wanted to use that property, and so they had to move, and they moved to Kensington, which is a little northeast of Berkeley. But still, many of the congregants are professors and former Berkeley students, and we're all very much involved in typical Berkeley activist kind of activities, you know, as are most Unitarians. So,
but I mean, in general, would you say is it predominantly white? You said there are.
Yes, most definitely predominantly.
Kind of more affluent.
Yes, definitely. Definitely upper middle class, mostly elderly. And I believe there's 12 blacks in our congregation.
So yeah, so I mean, so this thing that you were saying is, so the people in your congregation tend to be elderly, white, affluent,
Right,
and probably kind of lonely, and
right,
or need someone to be around, or maybe they need a little bit of help. I know my mom was
right,
in her home until she was 89 years old, and she often towards the end had somebody that living there with her that had very little. It wasn't like they were taking care of her, but we just knew as the family that somebody was coming in and out, and somebody that she could eat dinner with occasionally, or just
right.
to not be alone, or if there was something in the house, they could figure out how to get some help.
Right. It's just, if when you have a big house, it's hard to take care of, doing all the maintenance, especially if it's an old house, and there are a lot of old 100-year-old houses in the area.
And
And if you're up in the hills, you're all by yourself up in the hills, you can feel very disconnected. So,
how does that contrast, Albert, to the housing situation in some of the poorer, less affluent, and maybe communities of color in the same little pocket?
you mean the same little pocket up there?
Well, I mean, when you said earlier when we were chatting, that there's a lot of poor people in your county, I guess, as
Uh,
well as these affluent areas.
well, the rents here are out of sight. you know, uh, Even a small one bedroom costs around 2,100 or more, at least 2,100 bucks. A
Wow.
2 bedroom is well over 3,000 a month. And so, people who are just getting started, or who are activists who want to do activism in Black Lives Matter or whatever, and get $20 an hour, it's you can't live on it, and so they definitely need some sort of help. And as it turns out, there are several matchmaking or house, yeah, uh, nonprofits in the area, and and so the hypothesis now is that yes, this group that did this healing our eco uh, activism movement jam that I was a part of uh, wants to connect up elders and youngers through these matchmaking facilities, and then also hold jams of those same people, so that they can have a sense of community and learn from each other, and perhaps represent their interests to
Yeah.
city councils or other state agencies or whatever, to fight, having white people and black people fighting for each other's interests. And this is something that has never happened before that I know of, where they, on a continuing basis, you have a community of blacks and whites that are taking care of each other and looking out for each other.
Well,
Yeah,
and it all comes back to the understanding, as you were saying. Your initial vision was, let's get out of our silos and just start talking to each other and understanding. There was a podcast that I listened to. It was a diversity consultant, and he said, I don't want to hear what your hiring strategies are. I don't want to hear your numbers. I want to know, who do you go golfing with? Who do you go out
right,
to lunch with? And if you don't
right,
have any black friends, then you don't know what you're doing.
right.
It's like talking about riding a bicycle without getting on the bicycle. You can't,
Yeah,
if you don't
exactly.
know what that experience really is, you're just coming out of left field. So I mean, I just think this is such a cool idea. It's something that could be replicated anywhere. And faith communities, I think, are a great thing. But this idea of the home sharing came out of that thing. Let's talk to each other and
Right.
let's see. And that's such a great idea also, Albert, as you said, that to be an activist means maybe that you don't take this corporate job somewhere, so there can be financial implications to being an activist, and yet
Yeah.
that's what's really important. And so this complementary thing, you've got all these social justice advocates that are elderly, and you've got these youthful, energetic people. It's just, I think this is what nature is telling us all along, is the answers that we're seeking are probably right in front of us, if we just kind of open our eyes and our hearts.
Right. Well, I grew up as a baby boomer, basically, and your slogan was, "Don't trust anybody over 30." But I was shocked when I reached 30 years old how much people over 30 had learned since I was a teenager. So, and it was actually the young people who brought this to me. They want to have a relationship, I think, with elderly people, because they grew up probably in homes that didn't have two parents, or on their cell phones, or just not doing real things like you might have done on the farm as a young person, with your parents teaching you how to do farming and take care of plants and animals and so forth. When I was in the Army, the best soldiers were soldiers who were raised on the farm. They had a common sense and a kind of a balanced view that was very winning and very effective in bringing people together and dealing with real problems when you're out in the field or just wherever.
Yeah. I think that whole kind of community working together, a lot of those kind of more organic things, that when
Right.
a lot of us who have gone through, I don't know, gone to college, got a corporate kind of job, that's not a skill that you're, so you have to really develop it. And so this idea of taking younger people and older people, white people, Black people, different genders, all that stuff, and sharing a home, I think that's a great idea. All right, so I just want to give a little plug. If you want to know more about this, then head over to climateactionchallenge.net. You can pick up the book and the workbook. You can buy it right there. It's on Amazon. You can get it for your Nook, your Kobo, a bunch of other stuff now, which is cool. And we're also going to be doing an Impact Summit, December 15th through 17th, where you will be able to meet a lot of the challengers, hear their stories, and we're going to be featuring several of them. And we've got folks from the Philippines and Uganda and Nigeria and Bangladesh that are just making an impact in 90 days. And this is a message that if you have a city that is struggling to make its climate action goals, this idea of giving people the support, the coaching, the structure is really important. We've been ineffective for very long, and it's time to change it around. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much, Albert, for sharing this elegant, simple, very powerful idea with us today.
And Joanne, thank you for making everything I do possible, because I did lead a green team at a former church I was at, and it was very difficult to know what to do next. And you have an outline of step-by-step procedures to get it all going, and to think, holistically, rather than, oh, gee whiz, what I'm going to do at this next meeting kind of thing.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know
You're
it's
welcome.
funny. It's just funny that the whole thing of, the environmental movement, that this part of coaching and here's what you actually do is missing. And that's why
Right.
I don't mind advocating every single day. Go get the dang book so that we
Yeah.
don't waste decades because we don't have time
Right.
to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much, Albert. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. And yeah, definitely head over to climateactionchallenge.net, grab the book. You can look at all the different list of challengers there, become a sponsor, be a donor. There's a ton of ways we'd love to work with you. All right. Thanks. And remember, the time for action is now because there is no planet B. Have a beautiful day. Thanks, Albert.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye.